Hello everyone, I'm Logan.
I'm Pedro.
And we're Zero Progress.
In this video we are going to be reviewing our PC setup.
We're going to be looking at components, pricing, performance and aesthetics.
We're also going to be doing an overview of what we use it for and covering the environment that it's used in on a daily basis. Finally, we'll give our overall opinion of it.
This is less of an in-depth review, more of a quick look at the PC we use for gaming, entertainment and what we'll also be using for gaming in upcoming videos.
Okay, well, let's get started.
To start with, we'll take a look at the PC itself. The case is a Corsair Obsidian 500i RGB SE. Basically, it's the standard Obsidian case with 3 included fans and a Commander Pro lighting hub to connect the RGB fans together. Here are the 3 included fans already installed in the front of the case. The side panels and the front panel are a smoked glass. The front panel has 2 USB 3 ports and a USB-C port with the typical mic and headphone sockets. The top of the case is a vented shroud for the internal top mounted fans. Here's my external hard drive. It's a 4TB Seagate, which I keep my games on for portability purposes. Okay, moving on to the inside of the computer. So the processor I use is the AMD Ryzen 7 3700X. The motherboard is an ASUS Prime X570 Pro. I opted for the latest Ryzen chips for their good price to performance ratio, and the ASUS motherboard is in mid-range of the latest X570 chipset, and it fits the aesthetics of the build. So now we're looking at the cooler. The cooler is a Corsair H100i RGB Platinum SE. Again, it fits with the white theme of the PC and the Corsair RGB lighting. You can see the 2 fans mounted to the top of the cooling radiator. I chose a water cooler to keep it looking fairly tidy inside. I prefer the look of it and it is fairly quiet running. The RAM sticks are 2 8GB Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro. They're running at 3200 MHz. I believe 16 gig is a standard amount for RAM for most mid-range builds nowadays. So moving down to the graphics card. The GPU is an KFA2 NVIDIA Geforce 1070 Ti. It's in Sniper White. This GPU was actually brought over from my last build. At that point it was probably the strongest component, whereas in this build I believe it's one of the weaker components. The white look of the GPU is also what gave me the idea for the white aesthetic inside of my build now. So as the case only came with 3 fans, I wanted to keep it as an even 3 in and 3 out of airflow. I purchased an extra fan for the back. So that's a look at the inside of the case. Now we'll take a look at the power supply. So the PSU is a Corsair RM850X. It's an 850 watt power supply. It's possibly overkill for this build, but I just wanted to allow for any expansion and to not have to worry about any, wattage over usage, if you like. So have a quick look at the input-output panel. It's built into the motherboard, 7 USB 3 ports and a USB-C port. So the main operating system drive is a 1TB Samsung 970 EVO NVMe M.2 solid state drive. There's also a Western Digital 4TB storage drive in the back. Okay, that was a quick overview of the PC itself. Now we'll move on to the peripherals that I use. So one main difference from my setup is that I use a PC in my living room from a sofa. This limits the keyboard and mouse combos that I can use while not having a desk. I actually do prefer keyboard and mouse while with gaming. So I use the Logitech K830 MIDI keyboard with built-in mouse pad. It has backlights and a rechargeable battery which can be charged via micro USB. It's a good keyboard, it works for my purposes. Obviously it's wireless. Don't use it for a lot of games per se. This is more for browsing and generally just using my computer to launch apps. When I do need an actual mouse, I have a Logitech MX Anywhere 2S. This allows me to sync it up to my PC and my laptop at the same time. It's great for moving between them instantaneously. So I recently picked up a Steam controller in the last sale they did. I got it for a couple of pounds. It's a really awesome controller, especially for the older PC titles that don't support actual controllers. So we've all seen a DualShock 4. This white one I exclusively use for my PC. The DS4 is my preferred shape and feel over the Xbox controller. I use it more for modern games. It's connected using the official PlayStation USB dongle, which works really well when it's used through the Steam DS4 support for games. So here's a quick look at my TV in the living room. I use a Philips Abilight 55-inch 4K smart TV. It runs at 60Hz maximum, so my target for games is 60 frames a second. Here you can see a quick look at the Abilight feature in action. It works great for extra immersion in games, way more than the gimmick I thought it would be. So let's take a look at some performance in games. I'm using MSI Afterburner to display the GPU and CPU stats at the top left, while giving a frames per second reading too. Here The Witcher 3 is running on my PC. It runs a fairly stable 60 frames a second. The capture software and capture card isn't doing it much justice. It seems to have a couple of frame drops here and there. But as you can see, it runs quite nicely. I believe this setup can run most fairly modern games at fairly high graphic settings, around 60 frames a second. So having a quick dive into the actual graphics settings themselves. So we're running a 1440 resolution, which could be considered 2K. We've put a frame lock of 60 frames a second, as that's all the actual TV can hit. Okay, so going on to the Outer Worlds. Again, it runs at quite a nice 60 frames a second, teetering around that. The same as The Witcher as before, we're running everything at ultra settings. So to try and get that hitting 60 a bit more often, we could knock a couple of settings down. So I don't try and run all the games at 4K even though the TV's capable of it. 4K gaming, especially on the rig I've got with it being mid-range, doesn't really work very well. It lags quite a lot. I think you'll even struggle to hit 30 frames a second in most games. So we're heading for 1440p on all these games. Okay, so taking a look at Doom now. Again, runs really nicely at 60 frames. We've got a few frames drop here and there. We are running at ultra graphics again at 2K resolution or 1440p. All the games are also running in borderless windowed mode. That's mainly down to the capture card not capturing properly if it was running full screen. Okay, so now we'll try running some VR games with the Valve Index. So we've got the Steam Performance Graph and FPS VR running to show average frames per second, as well as temperature and other stats for the processor and graphics card. Here's me being terrible at Beat Saber. As expected, this runs on almost any rig, so we're getting a stable 90 frames per second. 90 Hz is what I've got the Valve Index set to in Steam. You can see I've got the graphical settings set with all the bells and whistles on, and the super sampling is set to 1.2. So, looking at Boneworks, this also runs quite well on many systems. We're getting a fairly stable 90 frames per second, except for some areas where there are a lot of assets to load. Like with most VR titles, there's not much in the way of graphics settings, so these were left at default. Now onto the VR system killer. Asgard's Wrath running through Revive. This kills my PC. You can see in the performance graph we're having loads of reprojection. I'm struggling to hit the target frame rate of 90 frames per second. This is even on low settings with a lowered resolution. It's a shame as the game is great. I'm going to look into ways to improve the performance. It may be Revive itself, but I believe a new graphics card will really help this. We'll now have a quick look at the Corsair IQ lighting for the RGB components. We're just going to run through a few presets to show how the fans can synchronise together. You can also change the RAM and cooler LEDs too. They look great in person, very vibrant, and a great ambient light show for the living room. The Corsair IQ software is quite easy to use. It allows for a lot of customization. Also, all the RGB components except for the GPU are Corsair branded. This means I can customise them all through this one program instead of multiple apps. Even the ASUS Motherboard RGB has been added as an option in the last update. Here's a quick look at a benchmark report generated from userbenchmark.com. Although it doesn't tell us much, it shows us the parts are operating within expectation and gives you guys a look at some pricing. So there's a look at the Zero Progress PC setup. I'm overall happy with how it runs games and for daily usage. The look is great in the living room and the RGB really pops with the lights off. I would say money could have been saved by using a lower wattage PSU, a cheaper motherboard, maybe an X470 with a BIOS update for the new Ryzen chips. Obviously a cheaper case and no RGB would lower the price significantly, but where's the fun in that? My next upgrades are definitely the GPU and possibly another 16GB of RAM.
So that was a review of our PC setup.
If you have any questions, thoughts about the video, advice on PC builds, or would like us to go in more in depth with anything we've covered here, please leave a comment.
Thank you for watching Zero Progress, and we'll see you later.